The high conclave of the Galactic Accord met in a grand hall built inside a hollowed-out moon. The walls shimmered with soft blue light and the air hummed with quiet energy. Delegates from 17 different species sat in curved rows, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some had smooth, glass-like skin. Others wore armored shells or floated in anti-gravity bubbles. All of them watched the center of the room, where a large hologram showed a small blue-green planet spinning slowly in the void. That planet was Kestros. It sat on the edge of known space, far from the busy trade lanes and ancient alliances. Until recently, it had been empty, just another rocky world with oceans and forests waiting for someone to claim it. But now humans had landed there. They had built stations, set up defenses, and declared it theirs. That act alone had stirred the galaxy. At the front of the chamber, Counselor Zelkor rose. He was tall and thin, with a body covered in smooth, iridescent plates that shifted color with his mood. Right now they glowed a dull red, frustration mixed with impatience. He tapped a clawed finger on the arm of his seat, and the hologram zoomed in on Kestros. Tiny red dots appeared around it, ships, weapons, human activity. Brothers and sisters of the Accord. Zelkor began, his voice deep and resonant. We face a problem not of war, but of recklessness. The humans, these Earthborn, have once again acted without thought. They see a world and they take it. They see a border and they cross it. They do not ask. They do not wait. They simply act. A murmur passed through the chamber. Some delegates nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely a century since first contact. And already they had caused 3 minor conflicts, 2 diplomatic incidents, and 1 near-catastrophic misunderstanding involving a sacred nebula and a human mining drone. Elder Mira of the Lumari Collective raised a slender hand. Her skin glowed faintly, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. But have they broken any laws? She asked gently. Kestros was unclaimed. The Accord permits settlement of such worlds provided no native life is disturbed. Zelkor's plates darkened to maroon. They disturbed the Vrath, he said sharply. The Vrath had scouts in that system. The humans fired on them without warning. That is disputed, Mira replied. Human logs say the Vrath ships opened fire first. Their sensors recorded energy spikes consistent with weapon charging. Human sensors can be fooled, Zelkor snapped. Their technology is crude. Their judgment, clouded by emotion. A low buzz of agreement rippled through several delegates. To many in the room, humans were fascinating but dangerous, like children playing with fire. They laughed too loudly, spoke too fast, and reacted with terrifying speed when threatened. They did not follow the careful, centuries-old protocols of galactic diplomacy. They solved problems with action, not debate. After hours of discussion, the conclave reviewed battle simulations run by the Accord's finest strategists. Each one showed the same result. If the Vrath swarm fleet, a massive coordinated armada of bioengineered warships, attacked Kestros, the humans would be overwhelmed. Their defenses were light, their fleet scattered, their command structure, too dependent on individual officers rather than hive-linked consensus like the Vrath or networked logic like the Thalassians. The simulations gave humanity 6 hours at most. Some predicted collapse in under 3. With this data in hand, the conclave reached a decision. They would not intervene. Let the Vrath test humanity's strength. If the humans fell quickly as expected, the Accord could step in afterward, declare the region unstable, and place Kestros under neutral stewardship, effectively removing humans from the equation without direct conflict. If by some miracle humans held out longer, then perhaps they deserved a seat at the table after all. It was a cold calculation, wrapped in the language of peacekeeping. But to the conclave it made sense. Stability was more important than fairness. Order mattered more than ambition. Far from Xylos Prime on the edge of human-controlled space, Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the command deck of Aurora Station. The station hung in orbit above Kestros, a sleek ring of metal and solar panels wrapped around a central core. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and ozone. Screens lined the walls, showing everything from weather patterns on the planet below to deep space sensor readings. Hayes was in his late 40s, with short gray hair and tired eyes that missed nothing. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't shouting orders. He was watching. Beside him, Lieutenant Kara Briggs tapped rapidly on a floating console. She was younger, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a restless energy. Her fingers moved like they had a mind of their own, pulling up data streams, cross-referencing signals, filtering out noise. "They're coming," she said quietly, not looking up. Hayes nodded. "How many?" "Over 900 confirmed signatures. More dropping out of subspace by the minute. It's the full swarm fleet." A silence settled between them. Not fear, just focus. They'd known this might happen. Ever since the Vrath scouts had approached Kestros 3 weeks ago, tensions had been rising. The humans had warned them off. The Vrath had ignored the warning. Now they were coming to finish what they started. "They think we're weak," Kara said, finally glancing at Hayes. "They think we'll panic, that we'll scatter or beg for help." Hayes turned to her. "What do you think?" She gave a small, tight smile. "I think they've never fought humans before." Down in the station's engineering bay, technicians ran final checks on the neural-linked weapon arrays, new systems that connected every turret, drone and fighter into a single responsive network. On the surface of Kestros, hidden beneath sand and rock, automated launchers powered up, their barrels aimed at the sky. In orbit, stealth satellites blinked to life, feeding real-time data back to Aurora Station. No alarms blared. No red lights flashed. The humans prepared in silence. They didn't need speeches. They didn't need last-minute plans. They had trained for this. They had built for this. Back in the crystalline hall of Xylos Prime, the conclave adjourned. Delegates drifted away, already drafting reports and updating risk assessments. Most believed they would reconvene in a few hours to discuss the aftermath of humanity's defeat. None of them imagined that the battle would be over before their next meal cycle. But on Kestros, time was not measured in hours. It was measured in heartbeats, and the humans were already counting. The Vrath swarm fleet tore through the edge of the Kestros system like a storm of teeth and shadow. Their ships were not built, they were grown. Twisted hulls of black chitin pulsed with internal veins of glowing green fluid. Wings of hardened membrane unfolded as they slowed from subspace, revealing rows of bioplasma cannons that dripped corrosive slime. There were over 1,000 of them, moving as one mind, one will. No radio chatter, no hesitation. Just silent, perfect coordination. From the command deck of Aurora Station, Captain Daniel Hayes watched the swarm spread across the tactical display. Red blips multiplied by the second, forming geometric patterns that shifted faster than the human eye could follow. The Vrath didn't just surround Kestros, they enveloped it, cutting off escape routes, jamming long-range signals, and positioning their heaviest ships in a tightening ring. "They're not wasting time," Kara Briggs said, her voice low. Her fingers flew across the console, pulling up threat assessments. "Command Hive ship is anchoring at Lagrange Point 3. That's their brain. If we crack that, the rest go blind." Hayes didn't answer right away. He studied the screen, his mind working through layers of strategy. The conclave back on Xylos Prime probably thought this was the beginning of a 6-hour siege. But Hayes knew better. The Vrath wouldn't wait. They'd strike hard and fast, hoping to shatter human morale before defenses could fully activate, and that was their mistake. "Activate Protocol Swiftfall," Hayes said. Kara's eyes flickered with something like relief. She tapped a final sequence, and deep within Aurora Station a low hum began to rise. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the deck plates, through the bones of everyone on board. Across Kestros, hidden systems woke up. Buried railgun turrets slid open their armored lids. Fighter silos unlocked. Orbital drones detached from maintenance docks and drifted into position. The humans had not built walls. They had built traps. The first Vrath ship fired. A bolt of green plasma lanced toward a human communications satellite. But before it hit, the satellite vanished, not destroyed, but cloaked. In its place, a decoy signal pulsed, mimicking a power surge from Aurora Station. The Vrath hive mind took the bait. 36 ships adjusted course, targeting the false signal. That was all the opening Kara needed. She triggered the neural network, a system that linked every human weapon, sensor and AI in the system into one living response. It didn't just react to threats. It predicted them. Using data from past Vrath engagements, quantum-entangled probes, and real-time analysis of swarm movement, The network calculated where the enemy would be before they got there. A swarm of micro-drones, no bigger than birds, launched from the planet's surface. They flew silently, riding thermal currents until they reached the lower Vrath formation. Then in perfect unison, they broadcast a signal. Not a weapon, not a jammer. A corrupted version of the Vrath's own hive frequency. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then chaos erupted. Vrath ships jerked mid-flight. Some fired on their own allies. Others veered off course, colliding with neighbors. The hive mind stuttered, confused by the fake commands flooding its network. It was like shouting contradictory orders into a crowded room. Everyone froze, then panicked. On Aurora Station, alarms finally blared, but not for damage. They signaled success. "We've broken their sync," Kara said, her voice tight with excitement. "They're operating on individual instinct now." "That's not their strength. That's their weakness," Hayes nodded. "Now we hit them where it hurts." He gave the order, and the real attack began. From the dark side of Kestros's moon, 6 stealth frigates emerged. They had been hiding there for days, powered down, radiating no heat. Now their engines flared to life, and they raced toward the disoriented Vrath flank. Their weapons weren't plasma or lasers. They fired kinetic rods. Tungsten slugs accelerated to near light speed. At that velocity, even a small rod could punch through a Vrath command ship like paper. One by one, the rods struck. Explosions bloomed in the void, not fireballs, but silent bursts of shattered chitin and vaporized fluid. The Vrath had no shield strong enough to stop relativistic impacts. Their biology simply couldn't adapt fast enough. On the ground, the railgun turrets opened fire. Each shot was aimed not at the biggest ship, but at the smallest. The Scout-class vessels that carried relay signals between the hive and its limbs. Destroy the messengers and the brain goes deaf. In orbit, Aurora Station unleashed its graviton pulse. It wasn't a weapon meant to destroy. It bent space itself just slightly for just a few seconds. But that was enough. The Vrath's jump drives, which relied on perfect alignment with subspace coordinates, misfired. Dozens of ships trying to retreat found themselves stranded, their engines sputtering in normal space. Back on Xylos Prime, the High Conclave watched the live feed with growing disbelief. Counselor Zelkor leaned forward, his iridescent plates flickering from red to pale yellow. Shock. Elder Mira's glow dimmed almost to black. On their screens, the battle wasn't unfolding as predicted. It wasn't a slow collapse. It was a rout. How? Zelkor whispered. They have no fleet to speak of. No superior firepower. No hive mind. They have something else, Mira said softly. They have speed. Not just of ships, but of thought. She was right. While the Vrath moved as one slow, massive mind, humans moved as thousands of fast, independent minds, linked not by biology, but by choice. Every pilot, every technician, every AI made decisions in milliseconds, adapting, improvising, exploiting openings the Vrath didn't even see. 8 minutes into the battle, the lead Vrath command vessel exploded. Not from a direct hit, but from a cascade failure. A micropulse hidden in a fake distress call had slipped past their bioshields and fried their neural core. Without it, the surrounding ships went completely silent, drifting like dead insects. Kara watched the tactical display clear, red blips vanishing one by one. They're breaking, she said. The survivors are scattering. Let them go, Hayes said. We don't hunt. We defend. Below them, Kestros remained untouched. Not a single building damaged. Not one civilian harmed. The entire battle had taken place in space, swift and surgical. On the bridge, the crew stood in quiet awe. No cheers, no celebration. Just the hum of systems powering down and the soft beeping of status reports. They had done what they trained to do. Nothing more. Nothing less. But across the galaxy, the message was already spreading. The humans had not just survived. They had ended a war before it truly began. In the crystalline hall of Xylos Prime, the Conclave sat in stunned silence. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. Their 6-hour prediction had been wrong by a factor of 36. Elder Mira finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We underestimated them. Zelkor said nothing. His plates had turned a deep, troubled gray. Far away on Aurora Station, Captain Hayes looked out the viewport at the stars. The Vrath wreckage drifted like dark snow. Kara joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. They'll be back, she said. Maybe, Hayes replied. But next time they'll think twice. And in that moment, humanity's place in the galaxy shifted. not through conquest but through consequence. They had shown the universe that when humans fought, time didn't measure their defeat. It measured how fast their enemies fell. The silence after the battle was heavier than the noise of war. On Aurora Station, the lights dimmed slightly as non-essential systems powered down. The hum of weapons cooling filled the corridors. Technicians moved quietly, checking damage reports that barely existed. Only 3 human drones had been lost. No ships, no lives. The entire swarm fleet, once a terrifying wave of chitin and plasma, was now just drifting wreckage and broken signals. Captain Daniel Hayes stood at the main viewport, watching the debris field slowly spread. His face showed no triumph, only the quiet weight of responsibility. He knew this wasn't over. Victory in one battle didn't mean safety forever. It meant the galaxy was now watching, and not all eyes were friendly. Kara Briggs approached, holding a datapad. Her usual sharp energy was softened by exhaustion, but her eyes were clear. Vrath survivors jumped out, she said. Scattered in 6 different directions. No pattern. They're running blind, Hayes nodded. Good, let them run. We don't need to chase ghosts. They'll tell their hive what happened, Kara said, and others will hear too. I know, Hayes replied. That's the point. Back on Xylos Prime, the High Conclave had not adjourned. They remained in their seats, staring at the replay of the battle. Again and again they watched the humans strike, not with brute force but with precision, speed, and something the Accord's analysts struggled to define. It wasn't just tactics, it was timing. It was the way human systems seemed to think ahead, not just react. Counselor Zelkor finally stood. His plates had stayed gray for hours, a sign of deep uncertainty. We were wrong, he admitted, his voice stripped of its usual arrogance. Not just in numbers, in understanding. Elder Mira turned to him. What do you mean? The humans don't fight like us, Zelkor said. We plan for logic, for patterns, for predictable responses. But humans, they act on instinct, yes, but also on something else. Hope, anger, pride, things we removed from our own decision-making long ago. A murmur rose in the chamber. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Emotion was seen as a flaw in most advanced species, a source of error. But here it had produced results no cold calculation could match. An analyst from the Thalassian hegemony stepped forward, holding a new report. We've reviewed human history, she said, from their ancient wars to their space age. In every conflict they lose at first. They are outnumbered, outgunned, but they never stop adapting. They turn losses into lessons within days, sometimes hours. She pulled up a timeline. Earth's World War II, the Martian Uprising, the Titan Skirmish. Each time humans faced near certain defeat, and each time they found a way to win faster than anyone expected. They don't prepare for the battle they think will happen, the analyst said. They prepare for the battle they hope won't happen, but are ready for anyway. In the chamber, a new kind of fear began to grow. Not fear of human aggression, but fear of human resilience. If a species could end a war in minutes that others predicted would last hours, what else could they do? Meanwhile, on Kestros, life returned to normal almost immediately. Down on the surface, colonists stepped out of shelters, blinking in the sunlight. Children pointed at the sky where a few distant flashes still glowed, the last echoes of the battle. Farmers checked their fields. Engineers inspected power lines. No panic, no chaos. Just people going back to work. That calm was more unsettling to the Conclave than any explosion. Aboard Aurora Station, Hayes received a priority message. Encrypted, but not from Earth Command. It came from the Galactic Accord itself. He opened it alone in his quarters. The text was short. Request immediate dialogue. Neutral ground. No weapons. We seek understanding. Hayes read it twice. Then he deleted it. He didn't reply right away. He knew this was a test, not of strength, but of trust. And humans had learned long ago that trust had to be earned, not given. He walked back to the command deck. Kara was reviewing sensor logs, looking for hidden threats. They sent a message, he said. She looked up. The Accord? Yes. What did you say? Nothing yet, she smiled faintly. Smart. Let them sweat a little. Hayes leaned against the console. They thought we were reckless. But we're not. We're ready. There's a difference, Kara nodded. Reckless gets you killed. Ready gets you home. Outside, a salvage team launched from the station, moving toward the largest piece of Wrath wreckage, a command vessel. half melted but still humming with residual energy. They weren't after weapons or tech. They were after data. Every scrap of information could help predict the next move. But even as they worked, Hayes knew the real battle had shifted. It wasn't in space anymore. It was in minds, in perceptions. The Conclave had seen humans as a problem to manage. Now they had to see them as a force to reckon with. Hours passed. Then a new signal came through, not from the Accord but from Earth. It was a simple update. All colonies secure, no casualties reported, public morale stable. The message ended with one line. You showed them what we are. Hayes didn't smile. He just saved the message and turned back to the stars. On Xylos Prime, the Conclave finally broke its silence. Elder Mira proposed a new motion. We must create a new variable in all future conflict models involving humans, she said. Call it the human unpredictability coefficient. It cannot be calculated, only observed. The motion passed without debate. Back on Kestros, night fell. The twin moons rose over the plains. In orbit, Aurora Station glowed softly against the black. Inside, the crew rested, but the station never slept. Sensors watched. Systems listened. And somewhere deep in its core, the neural network waited, quiet, ready and fast. The galaxy had learned a lesson that day. When humans entered a fight, the clock didn't tick down to their defeat. It ticked down to the end of the fight itself. And that end always came sooner than anyone expected. The message from the Galactic Accord arrived 3 days after the battle. It came not as a broadcast, not as a demand, but as a quiet request sent through secure diplomatic channels. The words were simple. We ask to speak, not as judges, not as rulers, as learners. Captain Daniel Hayes read it in his quarters aboard Aurora Station. The room was small with a narrow bunk, a desk, and a single window that looked out toward Kestros. Morning light from the planet's sun spilled across the floor. He read the message twice, then set the pad down. He didn't feel pride. He didn't feel fear. He felt caution. Kara Briggs found him there an hour later, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. You going to answer them? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. I have to, Hayes said. If I don't, they'll assume we're hiding something. If I do too fast, they'll think we're eager to please. We meet them on our terms, Kara nodded. Neutral ground. No weapons, one ship, one officer. Just me, Hayes said. She frowned. That's risky. Everything worth doing is, he replied. Down on Kestros, the colony buzzed with quiet activity. Repairs were nearly done, though there had been little to fix. The real work was in the data labs, where scientists combed through Vrath wreckage for clues about their biology, their communication, their weaknesses. But Hayes knew the most important work wasn't technical. It was psychological. The galaxy had to understand that humans weren't a threat because they wanted to conquer. They were a threat because they refused to be conquered. 2 days later, Hayes boarded the Wayfarer, a small diplomatic shuttle painted in plain white with no markings. It carried no weapons, no hidden systems, just a pilot, a translator AI, and Hayes in a simple dress uniform. The shuttle lifted off from Kestros and jumped to the rendezvous point, a quiet asteroid field halfway between human space and Xylos Prime. The Accord sent a single vessel, too, a sleek, silver disk that hovered silently in the void. No weapons visible. No escorts. A good sign. Hayes stepped onto the disk through a pressurized corridor. The air inside smelled clean, sterile. The walls pulsed with soft light. Waiting for him were 3 delegates. Elder Mira of the Lumari, Counselor Zelkor of the Thalassian Hegemony, and a new face, a young analyst named Talon from the Accord Strategic Review. They offered no handshake. No bow, just a nod. You came alone, Zelkor said. His voice was quieter than before. I did, Hayes replied. Because I have nothing to hide. Mira gestured to a circular table in the center of the room. Said we do not wish to interrogate. We wish to understand, Hayes sat. The others followed. Why did you act so fast? Talon asked, her voice curious, not accusing. Our model said you would hold defensive positions, wait for reinforcements, try to negotiate. But you attacked before the Vrath even finished forming up. Because waiting is how you lose, Hayes said. In every war humans have ever fought, the side that hesitated died first. We don't wait for the enemy to be ready. We make them regret showing up. Zelkor leaned forward. But you had no guarantee of success. You could have been destroyed in minutes. We knew the risk, Hayes said. But we also knew something your models missed. Humans don't just calculate odds. We change them, Mira tilted her head. How? By doing the unexpected, Hayes said. Your simulations assumed we'd fight like you, logically, step by step. But we don't, we fight like survivors. We use everything, noise, light, fake signals, even silence. We turn confusion into weapons. He paused, then added, You saw the battle last 8 minutes, but the real work started weeks before. We studied the Vrath. We learned how they think, how they move. Then we built traps that looked like mistakes. Talon's eyes widened slightly. The decoy satellite, the micro-drones, they weren't reactions. They were plans. Exactly, Hayes said. We didn't win the battle in 8 minutes. We won it the day we landed on Kestros. Silence filled the room. Not the cold silence of judgment, but the thoughtful silence of realization. Zelkor finally spoke. We believed emotion made you weak, but it made you fast. It made us human, Hayes corrected gently. We feel fear, but we act anyway. We feel anger, but we aim it. We feel hope, and that's what keeps us trying when others would quit. Mira looked at him with something close to wonder. You do not seek to rule the galaxy. No, Hayes said. We just want a place in it. Not as subjects, not as threats, as equals. The meeting lasted 2 hours. They spoke of borders, of shared security, of mutual respect. No treaties were signed. No promises made. But something deeper happened, a shift in understanding. When Hayes returned to the Wayfarer, he didn't look back. He knew the Accord wouldn't attack, not now. They had seen what humans could do when cornered, and they had heard what humans wanted when given a voice. Back on Aurora Station, Kara met him at the airlock. Well, she asked. They listened, Hayes said. That's a start. Down on Kestros, the sun set again. Colonists gathered in the central square, not for celebration, but for quiet reflection. They knew the galaxy was watching. They knew their actions spoke for all of humanity. And in the command center of Aurora Station, the neural network remained active, not waiting for war, but ready for peace. Because peace, like war, had to be defended, the Conclave would never again assume they knew how humans would act. They had learned the hard way that human time wasn't measured in hours of endurance, but in minutes of decision. And in those minutes, everything could change. The High Conclave did not meet in anger this time. They met in stillness. The Grand Chamber on Xylos Prime was quiet, the usual hum of debate replaced by a deep, thoughtful silence. Delegates sat not as judges, but as students. The hologram in the center no longer showed battle simulations or threat assessments. It showed a single image, the human shuttle Wayfarer departing the Accord vessel. Small and unguarded against the stars, Counselor Zelkor stood at the edge of the chamber, his iridescent plates a calm, steady blue, the color of clarity. He had spent the last week reviewing every human transmission, every historical record, every scrap of data the Accord had collected since first contact. What he found wasn't chaos. It was consistency. Humans always acted the same way when pushed. They adapted, they struck fast, and they ended things quickly. Elder Mira approached him. Her glow was soft, warm. We were wrong to see them as a problem, she said. We were wrong to see them as anything less than what they are, Zelkor replied. Not primitive, not reckless, just different. A new resolution had been drafted overnight. It carried no sanctions, no restrictions. Instead, it proposed a new standard for all future strategic planning involving humanity. From now on, every simulation, every risk model, every war game would include a single, unquantifiable variable, the human unpredictability coefficient. It could not be measured in numbers. It could only be respected. The resolution passed without a single objection. Far from Xylos Prime on the quiet colony world of Kestros, life moved forward. Fields were planted. Children went to school. Engineers repaired the few damaged sensors from the battle, though most had survived untouched. The people did not celebrate their victory with parades or speeches. They celebrated by living, by building, by growing, by staying. Aboard Aurora Station, Captain Daniel Hayes stood once more at the main viewport. The debris from the Vrath fleet had been mostly cleared, towed to a salvage yard on the far side of the moon. The stars looked the same as they always had, cold, distant, full of unknowns. But something had changed. The galaxy no longer saw humanity as a loose thread to be cut. It saw them as a force that could not be ignored. Kara Briggs joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. "The Accord sent another message," she said. Hayes took a sip. "What do they want now?" "Nothing," she said. "Just a confirmation. They've updated their protocols. All future engagements near human space will require direct consultation. No more tests. No more assumptions." Hayes nodded slowly. "Good." They also asked if we'd consider sending an observer to the next conclave session. He almost smiled. "Tell them we'll think about it." Kara leaned against the railing beside him. "Do you think they'll ever really understand us?" "No," Hayes said. "And that's okay. They don't need to understand us. They just need to remember what happened here." Below them, Kestros turned peacefully in the light of its sun. Smoke rose from chimneys in the colony town. Lights flickered on as evening came. It was an ordinary scene, simple, quiet, human. But to the rest of the galaxy it now carried a warning wrapped in calm. This world was defended, not by endless fleets or ancient treaties, but by people who ended fights before they could grow. Back on Earth, news of the battle had spread fast. Not as a story of war, but as a lesson in restraint. Governments didn't boast. Scientists didn't gloat. Instead, schools added new lessons about diplomacy, about the cost of misjudgment, about the power of preparation. Humanity had shown the galaxy that strength wasn't just in weapons, it was in timing, in unity, in the will to act before it was too late. Months passed. The Vrath did not return. Their hive had been fractured, their confidence broken. Other species that once eyed human territory with interest now gave Kestros a wide berth. Trade ships began to appear at the edge of the system, not to spy, but to ask for safe passage. Some even requested to dock, to speak with human engineers, to learn how their defenses worked. Hayes allowed a few, not out of trust, but out of strategy. Let them see. Let them understand that humans didn't build walls to keep others out. They built them to protect what was inside. One evening, as the twin moons rose over Kestros, Hayes walked the perimeter of the colony. He passed families eating dinner on porches, farmers checking irrigation lines, kids chasing each other through the dust. No one saluted him. No one called him a hero. They just nodded or smiled or said good evening. That was enough. He stopped at the edge of a wheat field where the land met the dark hills. The wind carried the scent of soil and growing things. In that moment he knew why they fought, not for glory, not for empire, but for this. For quiet nights, for ordinary days, for the right to live without fear. On Xylo's Prime, the conclave met again. This time they did not discuss humanity as a threat. They discussed how to coexist, how to share knowledge, how to avoid another misunderstanding. Elder Mira proposed a joint research initiative. Human engineers working with Accord scientists to study non-lethal defense systems. Zelkor seconded the motion. It was a small step. But in a galaxy built on centuries of caution, it was a giant leap. Aboard Aurora Station, the neural network remained active, not because war was coming, but because peace had to be guarded just as fiercely. Kara monitored the sensors not for enemies, but for signals of cooperation, trade requests, scientific queries, diplomatic overtures. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had not demanded a throne among the great powers. They had simply proven that when they stood their ground, the ground stayed theirs, and across the galaxy, species that once dismissed humans as emotional, chaotic, and short-sighted now spoke of them in hushed tones, not with fear but with respect. Because they had learned the truth. When humans entered a fight, the clock didn't count down to their defeat. It counted down to the end of the fight itself. And that end always came in minutes, not hours.